Hello and welcome everyone to today's lesson where we're going to be looking at regular and irregular past verbs. Let me share my screen and take you through the slides. So we're going to first of all look at some tricky past irregular verbs and then look at the three ways to pronounce ed in past regular verbs. So, of course, the difference between regular verbs and irregular verbs is in their conjugation. Regular verbs, nice and easy. For both the past simple and the past participle forms, we add ed to the base verb. So, for example, if you have pick, it's picked, picked, clean, cleaned, cleaned, need, needed, needed. So, regular verbs are very easy to conjugate. Whereas when we come to irregular verbs, they get difficult because they don't follow a specific pattern, neither for the past simple form nor for the past participle form. We just have to know them. Therefore, they need to be learned by heart. So let's look at some examples. For example, the verb see, past simple saw, past participle seen. The verb keep, past simple and past participle kept. Keep, kept, kept. The verb beat, past simple beat, so the same as the base verb, but the past participle changes to beaten. And then the verb run, the past simple is ran, but the participle returns to the simple form, run, ran, run. And there are some verbs that don't change at all. For example, put, put, put. So you can see how irregular they are. We just need to memorize them. Now, let's start by looking at some tricky irregular verbs. These are the verbs that I often hear mistakes with. The first one is the verb be. You have to remember that be is the only irregular verb that has two past simple forms. Every other verb has only one past simple form, but be has two, was and were. We use was with I, he, she, and it, and we use were for you, we, and they. And be careful that you can be a singular you referring to one person or a plural you referring to many people. In both cases, whether the you is singular or plural, the verb be in the past is were with you. And the past participle is been. Now, then there's a group of verbs that I often hear mistakes with, where I hear you adding ed to them, treating them as regular verbs. They are in bring, buy, catch, fight, seek, teach, and think. I often hear things like catched or teached. Do not add ed to these verbs. They are irregular and they kind of rhyme. It's bring, brought, brought, buy, bought, bought, catch, caught, caught, fight, fought, fought, seek, sought, sought, teach, taught, taught, and think, thought, thought. So remember this group. Then the next one that I often hear mistakes with are the verbs go and get. They get confused with each other. Remember that go is went and gone, and get is got, got. Now in American English, you may hear get, got, gotten. And the other two verbs I often hear confused with each other are feel and fall. Remember that feel is felt, felt, and fall is fell, fallen. And the last ones I want to mention are the verbs read. When you look at the two other parts, past simple and past participle, they look exactly the same in spelling, but the pronunciation is different. So it's read, the base verb, read, read. Also be careful with come and become, that they're in the past form, past simple form, they change. Come, came, become, became, but in the participle form, they return to their base verb. Come, came, come, and become, became, become. So these are the irregular verbs I wanted to mention. Now we can look at the pronunciation of regular verbs. They all end in ed, but there are three different ways to pronounce this ed. One is t, the other one is d, and the other one is it. For example, pick, the past simple, and participle is picked. For clean, it's cleaned. And for need, it's needed. Did, right? Let's have a look why there are 3 different ways of pronouncing the ed. Now, starting with need, so must we pronounce the e sound? It is to differentiate between the present form and the past form. If you don't, and you just go need and trying to put 2 d's together, we cannot hear the difference. So this vowel sound, E, separates the sound D from the end of the verb need from the ed of the past tense, right? And the other sound that also needs this separation so we can differentiate between present and past is the sound T. So for example, visit, if we want to make it clear that we are using it in the past, we have to add the vowel, visited. Otherwise, it's visit, and we can't differentiate. So remember just these 2 sounds. If your verb ends in one of these sounds, D or T, we need the sound E to separate it and make it past tense. But if the last sound of your base verb is not D or T, then this separation, this phonetic separation, is not needed anymore, and that's when the E, the letter E, becomes silent. That's why it's cleaned, not cleaned, or picked, not picket. Now, of course, you may ask, so, okay, we get that, but why is it T with pick instead of D? Why do we have to change that sound? Well, it's because the sound K is an unvoiced unvoiced equivalent of the sound of a voice sound. K is an unvoiced sound, and that therefore it combines more easily with the unvoiced sound T. Let me just explain what a voiced sound and what an unvoiced sound is. The articulation may be exactly the same. The difference is a voiced sound, you will have a vibration here in your throat, in your vocal cords. So when I say D, I am vibrating my vocal cords. When I say T, it's more silent, it's unvoiced because I'm not vibrating anymore. And we have several pairs in English like that. Let me take you through these, what we call consonant pairs, voiced, unvoiced. Let's see if you can hear the slight difference. The articulation point is exactly the same, but there is this difference between vibrating and not vibrating. So as we've just said, the sound D is voiced and the sound T is unvoiced. So if we go robbed, bd, voiced, stopped, unvoiced. Loved, voiced, laughed, unvoiced. So I just go through the others, compare, jogged, liked, quizzed, danced, massaged, washed, judged, watched, breathed, birthed. And so these are the pairs. And then we also have 3 voiced sounds that don't have an unvoiced equivalent. And these are L, cold, calmed, and N, band. So, what about vowel sounds? Now, vowel sounds are all voiced, so the sound of ed is just D. For example, snowed, played, married, ordered. And again, the very typical mistake is saying things like snowed, played. Avoid adding the E sound to a verb that ends in a vowel sound, right? Of course, in American English, the last one, I said ordered, because it's British English, there is no R at the end, it's just a schwa. But in American English, the R is pronounced, it's rhotic, and it's ordered, but it's still a D sound because R is voiced. Okay, let's have a summary. If your verb ends in the sounds T or D, you must pronounce the letter E as E. Needed, visited. If your verb ends in any other sound, you must drop the E sound. Now, with most consonant sounds and all vowel sounds, you must just pronounce the D sound. Cleaned and married. So that's all. There are only a few unvoiced consonant sounds where the D changes to T, like picked or laughed. But don't worry too much about this difference because the sounds D and T are very, very similar, as I explained. The only difference is a little vibration here. You don't need to worry too much about this D, T distinction. What is really important is to drop the E sound if your last sound is not T or D. Now, I just want to finish by explaining why it is difficult to drop the E sound, why many of us make this mistake and want to pronounce the E. Because what happens is when you drop the E, you are creating what we call a consonant cluster. That is two consonant sounds without a vowel sound between them. Now, in many languages, really in many languages, consonant clusters, especially at the end of a word, are very uncommon. Now, if your native language is like that, if in your native language you don't have consonant clusters or don't often end words with consonant sounds, then you will need to practice a lot to get used to pronouncing the past regular verbs correctly. So how to do this practice? What I recommend is that you download the audio recording of both the irregular verbs and the regular verbs. They're in your online course. Save these files to your phone, and occasionally, maybe even if they're really difficult for you, once a week, listen to these recordings and repeat them. You do need a lot of practice with these. Right, that's the end of this lesson on past tenses, regular and irregular verbs. I hope it's been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. For more on this topic, click here. Remember to also check out my complete online course and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and happy studies!